What's up and welcome to the Kinda Funny Gamescast for Tuesday, March 4th, 2025. Of course, I'm your host, Tim Geddes. I'm joined today by the Big Daddy himself, Greg Miller.
Hello, Timothy.
It is Christmas in March, Joey Noel.
I'm not happy with this side of my hair today, but hello.
And
Spinning it?
No.
she really did. She really did.
Spin, and I was like, oh, Greg's gonna fix it. And then I was like, oh, not the way I want.
And the new face of video games, Blessing Adeoye Jr.
Good day, Tim.
You want me to spit in your hair?
I mean, go for it.
Oh my God, what a way to start the day, everybody. Of course, this is the Kinda Funny Gamescast. Each and every weekday, we get together to talk about video games and all the things we love about them, whether that's reviews, previews, predictions, going through lists. We talk about everything you'd want to hear when it comes to video games. Of course, you can get that wherever you are, whether it's podcast services, YouTube, Twitch, we're live, we're VOD, we're podcasts. We are trying to serve you. And if you like that, you should get the Kinda Funny membership where you can get the show ad-free and you get a daily exclusive Greg Way. Greg, what's it about today?
Grief.
I don't like grief.
Hey,
You know what I
man.
mean?
Yeah.
You gotta deal with it, though.
Mayday wrote in about it. They're going through it. I'm there to help them.
You can help you, too, if you need the help.
When
Get
I
the
see
Kinda
you,
Funny
when you
membership.
come to the Chicago thing, if you want me to spit in your hair, you just say it. I'll do it, kids.
Please don't ask Greg
We're
to
still
spit
in
in
a
your
pandemic,
hair.
I think.
I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal
There
with
can't be any
whatever
good
happens from that.
repercussions from that.
I'll do it. Kevin, you want some spit?
For a chance to be part of this show, you can submit your thoughts and opinions as YouTube super chats. We are talking about Split Fiction, the latest from Hazelight. So if you have any questions about that, please super chat them in and we will get to those. A little housekeeping for you. You already got our reaction to Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3+4 on Kinda Funny Games Daily. God is real. I guess religion is something I care
Or-
about now. And or Satan.
Thank you.
According to Greg.
Just saying. Could go either way.
Who knows? The Kinda Funny podcast will be right after this, live for everybody with our new schedule where now all of our shows are live. We are a live talk show network. Thank you so much. We appreciate you hanging out with us each and every day, all day, starting with Games Daily, going through to Gamescast, following that up with whatever other show we got, and then a gameplay stream. Whole bunch of cool stuff for you. Speaking of gameplay streams, the stream today, Bless, is returning to Dark Souls.
Andy's sick, so we'll see. We'll see.
Bless might be returning to Dark Souls. He's doing something, though. It's going to be fun. If you're a Kinda Funny member, you get Greg's Greg Way about grief. Thank you to our Patreon producers, Delaney Twining, Carl Jacobs, Omega Buster. You're the best of us. Today, we're brought to you by Monster Hunter Now, but we'll tell you all about that later. For now, let's get into it. The topic of the show. Split Fiction. Our review. Everyone at this table has played it. Multiple other people at Kinda Funny have played it.
What up, Barrett?
And that makes sense because the only way to play this game is with multiple people.
That's right.
It takes two, Greg.
Yes.
Not the name of this game,
No,
but it does
but
take
yeah,
two
yeah.
to actually do it. The Steam description reads as follows. Embrace mind-blowing moments as you're pulled deep into the many worlds of Split Fiction, a boundary-pushing co-op adventure. The developer is Hazelight, publisher EA. The release date March 6th for $50, and it comes with Buddy Pass, which allows you to, for free, play with another friend.
So cool.
Very cool.
Very cool. Metacritic is currently sitting at, as of 10 a.m. today, at a 91.
God damn.
It Takes Two, their previous game, was an 88, also a Game Awards Game of the Year winner, and No Way Out got a 78. Some exciting news for you. We did something different for this one that we've never done here at Kinda Funny before. Greg and I recorded our entire playthrough of this game that we're going to post on Thursday. If you want to watch us play through the entirety of the game for this review, for the purposes of us editorially thinking about this game, so you can kind of get a little bit of insight into how we review the game, and like we give our updates kind of like as we're playing a different style of content than we've normally done, because
Sure.
it's a little less on the like let's make a whole bunch of jokes and
We're
stream
quiet while we
side.
play for the most part.
Yeah. So
And now it's
actually
like, oh,
playing
that's
through the
really
game.
cool.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
laugh out loud at this part.
Exactly. So a lot there, so you'll be able to actually see that entire thing, but that'll
Right.
be on Thursday.
And right now the plan is that's taking the place of the stream because it's like a 12-hour,
know.
14. It hasn't been
Yeah.
assembled. I forget how long it's going to be. And that'll be a YouTube premiere.
Yes.
Right? If everything goes correctly.
If everything goes correctly.
You know, sometimes things don't go right with YouTube when you put a thing into it. So we'll see what's up.
But we're going to try, and it should be fun. So hang out and check that out later this week. But enough about all that. I want to get into it. Blessing, I want to start with you. What would you give Split Fiction on the Kinda Funny scale?
Ooh. Before I say the number, I want to wax poetic for a second.
Ah.
Because I've been looking forward to this game, as we all have, right? I think Hazelight is one of those developers that you look at and you're like, oh man, there's something special. They're unique. They are small on the AAA side. I don't even know how we categorize them anymore, whether they're indie, AAA. Obviously, they have their games published by EA, and their budgets grow with every single game, right? And this game, Split Fiction, is their biggest endeavor yet. Jumping into Split Fiction, my expectations were over the moon as far as what this was going to be, because I love It Takes Two. We love It Takes Two. I even loved A Way Out, and many of us loved A Way Out as well, right?
By the way, I screwed you over. I wrote No Way Out because, of course, that's a WWE pay-per-view, so that's always on my... I'm sorry. A Way Out, A Way Out, A Way Out.
Upon playing through Split Fiction, finishing Split Fiction, I'm so let down by the story and characters in this game. There are 3 major characters here, right? We got Zoe, we got Mio, we got Raider. None of them worked on me, right? I didn't believe in the chemistry really between any of these characters. I think thematically there are things with the story where I'm like, ooh, man, I see what you're going for, but I don't know if this is the right format for the kind of story and the kind of themes you want to tackle here. And so much of those things, I think, overall let me down to the point where I look at a game like It Takes Two and even A Way Out, and I'm like, I might have liked the stories in those games better. That said, on the gameplay side of Split Fiction, Hazelight fucking has it. Like, it is absolutely wild as far as the amount of ideas, the amount of mechanics, the amount of creativity, to where I look at Hazelight now in the same regard as I look at a Team Asobi or even as a Nintendo, as far as their gameplay design acumen, their chops here. There are moments that I had in this game playing alongside Barrett where we're saying wow out loud. We're blown away. We are, surprised by things, whether it be art direction, whether it be the amount of fidelity, where at any time, of course, you're playing Split Fiction and it's a Hazelight game, so it is split screen. And the fact that we're seeing things that are rendered twice on the same screen at the same time, we're blown away by what we're looking at. The amount of different ideas here, as far as, wow, you guys... when we visited Team Asobi, me and Roger, for Astrobot, right? Like, they showed us how they come up with ideas. And it was like a note card thing or a sticky note thing where people would come up with ideas on sticky notes, and we got to see the wall. And it was crazy to see how many different ideas that they had there at Team Asobi. I imagine Hazelight has a very similar system of, hey, we come in today, what ideas do we have? Let's fucking try them out. And it is crazy to see moment to moment how things change, moment to moment how, things work together, and they allow you to feed off the other player in very interesting and creative ways. I'm blown away. The one last thing I'll say before I pass it on. I
want the score though. I want to see how this nets out for you.
I'm giving it a 9 out of 10.
Oh wow!
Yeah, this is a 9 out of 10 video game for me. And I think the thing that sealed it in is there is a moment in this game that's later on in the game that I think will go down as the best video game moment of the year. Wow. And I think it'll be very tough for any other game to challenge it.
And I feel like there's no doubt about what you're talking about.
Yeah, it'll be very
Once
obvious.
you've played it,
for
it's
you
like,
guys.
oh, this is what Bless is meaning.
Joey,
What
about you?
This is my first Hazelight game. I haven't played It Takes Two or Way Out or Brothers. I think I have watched some of you all play in different amalgamations, whether it be maybe Andy or Mike playing on stream. Anyways, I didn't really know what I was getting myself into. I just know that it looked cool and it sounded cool and I wanted to play it. So I went in kind of not really having any expectation because I just didn't know. I had an excellent time. Terrible at platformers. I pushed really hard through. I didn't even finish Astrobot.
Who'd you play with?
I played with my friend Maria. It took us we pretty much played all weekend, and that's all we did, and it was an excellent weekend. So I terrible at platformers. This game I feel like is really accessible in terms of platforming. I didn't think it was overly hard, which I appreciated, and I do think that, and I can't really confirm this because I haven't actually talked to any of you about it. I do feel like some of the boss fights, if you're struggling with them, get easier.
Oh, interesting.
But I don't know if that is just me getting better, or if it seemed like some of the elements maybe were dialed back a little bit, so it made it easier to progress if they obviously knew that you were having issues, which as a terrible platformer, I really appreciate.
I do think the game does a really good job of, because it's co-op, giving you opportunities to cheese the system if you need to, with if one of you dies, the other just has to stay alive for the other to come back. And I think that maybe
Stuff
that
like that.
inherently makes it easier, because the more you do it, you kind of get used to that stuff. Because I don't know that it gets easier from a gameplay perspective, but I do think there's a lot of systems that
Maybe
allow
I'm
you to
just
keep
not
moving
giving
forward.
myself enough credit that
you're
I'm
killing
getting
it.
better. I agree a lot with Blessing. I think the story overall is very fine. I think that there's part of the story that for me felt a lot stronger than the other one. So I think that's my story issue, is just that they feel a little bit unbalanced. The gameplay and what they do in all of this, I think, is incredible. And there's so many. This is a game that I think the less you know about going into it, the more fun it's going to be. And like, I kind of almost, it's going to be a hard game for me to review because I don't really want to talk about a whole lot because I think that there's so many cool things and reveals and stuff like that, that it's going to be really fun. And I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. So I had a great time.
What's
I'm
your
so
score?
sad. Oh, I'm an 8.5.
Oh, okay.
Hell yeah.
9 from Bless, 8.5 from Joey. Greg Miller. I don't know what score you're giving this game. I played the entire thing with you.
I know, yeah.
Talked to you the whole time through it, but we didn't talk after. We didn't talk at the end.
And I feel like purposely doing it, we didn't talk like, where are you scoring? What are you feeling? Yada, yada. There's so much I want to say about Split Fiction. And a lot of it echoes what Bless said in the front. I am disappointed in this game. The narrative did not hit for me. In a world where we talk about video game writing being cheesy, being cringe, being all these different things, like, I think it's especially bad here. I thought this was very much, you and I say it multiple times, especially as we're getting going, but like, this is written and performed like a young adult novel, which games should be for all ages. And I love young adult stuff often. So it's not like I'm knocking that, but it is, as I said at the end, I think, but I was saying, talking to people about it, like, this game is as subtle as a sledgehammer. Mm-hmm. Like, from the moment you meet the three characters, you're like, I see where we're going. I wonder how this is all going to wrap up and go. To the point that for me then, when you battle up these hills to get to that payoff, it isn't worth the narrative structure of it. Like, I early on, and it was like, oh, like, you and me turned to each other throughout this game and Let's Play you'll see on Thursday and laugh, right, at the lines, the way they're delivered, what they're doing. We say it before the character says it because we know, like, what's the most cheesy, predictable thing you'd say here? This is what you would do. And for me, that hampers the entire experience because it takes two getting sucked into this kid's playroom, being the dolls, being the toys, added this whimsical playbox nature to the game and the narrative where suddenly I thought that made sense of how you're mixed up and what you're doing. And this is so crazy, but we're okay. Cody, you know, like, there was something to it that also skews young adult, I think, right? But worked for what they were doing overall, where this feels like I'm playing a Disney Channel original movie, which again, isn't me throwing shade at that. I'm not the audience for that though, right? For the most part. So that was a bummer to me because I was never like, when you and I would sit down on the couch, I was never like, I can't wait to see what happens next. I can't wait to get through this section to see the payoff to this, because real quickly I learned, oh, like, I know where we're going. I know what this is going to be. This is very by the basics, whatever. What I would say, though, to then bring it back to the positive, is that nobody does this better co-op gameplay than Hazelight. You want to talk about an industry littered with the corpses of developers who have, due to, you know, the head of their studio, the head of their publisher, had to go and do something that they aren't passionate about, that they shouldn't go do, a game that is outside of their genre. Hazelight's sitting here and now doing this 3 times in a row and being like, we are the co-op studio and we're only getting better at it technically. Here's a $50 game that comes with a pass to play with your friend for free. Cross-platform exists. Yes, you can give the pass to somebody cross-platform and play with them. You can do all these different things. Do all that and still say the best way to play this is on a couch with somebody. That's how you want to experience this game. For them to do that, the finale of the Let's Play is what and it's all one big video, but our final session is the one I would point to, because not only is it the best stuff in the game, that it's inarguably, I say it, well, this should have been in the game. This should have been the game. Yeah. The game's great as is. Don't get me wrong.
Bear was saying the same thing.
This is just so holy fucking shit when it starts happening, right? What I would point to is, let's peel back the curtain, and you don't see us review games often. I sit down on the couch and I am upset. It has been a long day of content. Things are not going my way on a few different projects. Time-wise, we are in a crunch because of this. And so I sit down not in a good place. And you will see by the end, me grinning, holy shit, this is great, blah, blah, blah. Like, it did what I always talk about Tales from the Borderlands doing, where it's an old Greg story of being, I'm super grumpy, I go through a bunch of games, I don't want to play, I'm not finding what I want to play. I sit down and play Tales from Borderlands, and suddenly I'm laughing and I've forgotten my troubles. It's the same thing here. The gameplay is that good in It Takes Two. And I think it's going to be an interesting look in, because I think the majority of time, and maybe I'm just skewing negative on my own thing, it's a very just us. Again, we're not hamming it up for the camera. We're playing it and reviewing it and trying to process all the information. I think so many times in there, it's me mocking the game and the dialogue, or it's me saying this side story is what the content should have been. Like, why aren't we doing this?
I mean, yeah, you say that so many times, which I do think says something of like, there's so many great ideas there that like,
but to take
go off.
It's I can't take away from the fact that even like, and I think I say it in the second to last one, we're doing a section, and I'm like, I think I do. Hey, real quick, just to point out, I know I'm saying X, Y, and Z and making fun of this, but like, this is so good, and we have our own language now of how we're playing this game and what we're doing in this game, and it's running flawlessly and doing all of this different stuff. Like, the gameplay is so good. I give this an 8 out of 10. I think this is a great game. It is not my favorite Haze-like game. I think we can get into it as we get into the weeds here about more of, I think it overstays its welcome again. I think I wasn't into the fantasy setting of Zoe's world versus Mio's world of being this like cyberpunky future-y kind of thing, which then makes half the game be like, oh, we're doing this. But like, that's a personal thing. I'm not trying to talk about the quality of it. I think the story pulls it down for me, but there's still so much amazing gameplay here. 8 out of 10 for Greg. Great.
God, it's so fun going last here and hearing everyone's thoughts and agreeing with so much of what's being said. I want to kind of just jump off of what Greg's saying, but the flip of it. I'm going to start with saying I'm giving this an 8 out of 10. It's an 8 out of 10 that I would recommend to anybody, though. I feel like this is a game that literally anybody that's ever held a controller is going to enjoy playing. It might not be their favorite game ever, the best game ever, but there's going to be so many moments in it that are worth playing this game. Hazelight has done such an amazing job of creating gameplay that can and experiences that can only happen with another person. And I think that is so commendable and important. And beyond that, come up with so many creative new ways to play games that I've never seen. Bless bringing up the Astrobots and that Nintendo Magic. Like, there's so much of that here. And like that, I don't say lightly. Like, that is a very big deal because I don't think that many developers have the ability to do that, let alone do it over and over and over again for what I think our final count was probably close to 14 hours or so.
I would think so, yeah.
Because we did all of the side stuff as well.
Got the trophy, what up?
Which I love the side stuff. The side stuff, some of my
I'm
favorites.
so I have more to go back to. I have 3 that I missed that I need to go back to.
I'm just
very
realizing
that
I never popped that trophy, and I thought I did all of the side stories.
Yeah.
So now I got to go back to Barry and be like, yo, what the fuck?
Which one did you miss?
Yeah.
And yeah, so from a gameplay perspective, which I do think is the most important thing to talk about here, because I think that it is so good. I feel like gameplay wise, though, for as good as it is, I'd give just that a 9 out of 10. Like, I don't think it hits that 10 Astrobot levels of creativity, and this just feels so good. There's a lot of moments that I'm like, this could have felt a little bit better. Having said that, I do think it's very forgiving. I think that they designed the game very well to not frustrate you. Like, the checkpoint system is very, very good. And there's a handful of times that it was like, but even then, when it's not, it just stood out because it's so good the majority of the time that I almost don't even criticize that at all. I feel like
I don't either. That wouldn't have been one
the
of my
checkpointing is great, but and again, like the amount of things you're doing that are different but that are immediately understandable. Yeah, there was maybe in 14 hours 2 moments that were like, what do we do? And that lasted a minute maybe, and then we figured it out.
And one of them was yesterday when I was all bent out of shape and I was like hitting R2 when I should have been hitting L2.
Oh yeah.
And it was like, well, hit that. I'm like, oh, hold on, I'm an idiot.
Boom, done. And that's the thing is, like, this game is so brilliantly designed that when you're playing it, no matter what new gimmick, gameplay mechanic, puzzle they throw in front of you, you know how to solve it, and you're kind of excited to solve it. So I think like that to me is like, wow, they really pulled that off. I totally agree about the story stuff. It was a major letdown for me. Similar to Bless, I was very excited for this game. I had very, very, very high expectations. And I was hoping that since they were going a different direction with the narrative and clearly putting more into it, like maybe it's just because they're a bit more humanoid, but it still has the fun gameplay stuff of It Takes Two. But these are more human stories we're dealing with. I mean, I guess It Takes Two was as well, story-wise. But like in terms of like how they're presenting it, it seemed a little bit more like, hey, we're going to try to tell a story that matters. And like, I was very, very let down by it. I think the game's very funny. I think that there's a lot of well-written jokes. I laughed a lot. It's
a lot
just
of Easter eggs.
And a lot of homages,
like
and I was popping off left and right for things. Like a lot of great stuff with the writing. I just think that the characters and plot are like bad.
I mean, Disney Channel original movie, I think, is such a good analog. Because as I was playing, I was like, this feels like it went straight to Nickelodeon as far as like what the vibe is of this story and who these characters are. Where you get later on and they're trying to have emotional moments.
You're like,
and,
nah, dog.
and I'm like, "Look, you're not gonna get tears out of me, bro. I'm sorry. Like this isn't working on me in that way. But go on. Sorry, I'm with you though.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have to say too much more, but yeah, I'm very much let down by the story and the characters, and I think that is a bummer because I think that a different tone and different direction, like the talent's there, they have the stuff. I just feel like they went too far in a direction that I don't feel like was in service of what this game is. When you look at the quality of the gameplay and what they ask you to do and the environments you're in, which are beautiful, and there's so many of them, and dozens of times I was like, how are there this many assets in this game? Like, it's so impressive.
They aren't reusing stuff. Yeah, that's one of the things we kept calling it.
Yeah, exactly. And similar to what Greg was saying, like, I also preferred the cyberpunky stuff over the fantasy stuff, and that's just the type of person I
Les,
am.
what did you prefer?
I mean, I'm more of a sci-fi person than a fantasy person in general, but I think by the end of it, I kind of like both.
Okay,
I wasn't dreading going into one or the other.
And I wouldn't say I was
either, and I don't really like sci-fi that much or fantasy, and I was like, I'm picking the sci-fi side the sci-fi girl. And I ended up liking the fantasy stuff way more.
Yeah. I was never dreading going into the fantasy stuff,
Correct.
but I always preferred to go into the sci-fi stuff.
Yeah.
For me, the dread, which I would not use as a word, it was more the fact of like, oh, we're gonna be here a while. Like there was one.
That's exactly how I felt about the sci-fi.
One of the days and see, this is one of those mileage will vary kind of thing where we came out and it was like, these levels are long, and levels I'm using loosely, chapter I guess or whatever. Where we came out and it was like, Bear's like, oh, did you get? I'm like, we were in there an hour and a half, I feel like, and we did one, maybe an hour 15 or whatever. And so it's like this is where it is again for me. Like, I wish it was just quicker. I wish it was just faster. Again, like this is such a weird one, but with the narrative not being great, being good, even back to you saying it's just straight up bad. If I was at home and Jen and I were playing this, we would have never rolled credits. We would have we would have enjoyed this for 2 nights and been like, oh man, the gameplay's cool, blah blah. But inevitably, it would have been, especially with Jen, who's like got a way higher bar for what she wants to play or do with her time. She would have wanted to watch something over this, and I feel like that's always my critique of these games. Of our, as much as we love Supermassive, as much as we love Dark Pictures and Until Dawn kind of games, like I really feel these types of games should be 4 hours tops, and it should be like you're doing 2 movies and being done. That's my personal preference, because even for us trying to schedule the time to do the Let's Plays became so tough because we have so much going on and so many things. So it's like getting in there and stuff. I would have preferred, rather than being these levels for so long, get the levels the same, sci-fi or fantasy, but then have it be way quicker as we're switching what we're doing. Because it is, you get into these things and you get, all right, this is going to be this chapter's mechanic for what you're going to go through and do. And the mechanic's good, but when it's not great, I was like, okay, I'm ready to move on to the next thing and get out of here.
The side stories fix that so much for me.
Yeah. Well, I wanted more side stories. I would love a game that was all that way.
Yeah, like for context for people, right? So you have these 2 characters you're playing as. One person's playing as Mio, the other is playing as Zoe. Both of them are... Mio is more of a sci-fi person, Zoe's more of a fantasy person, and like dictated by that determines the world that you're in. So when you're, more in like Zoe's mindset, you are playing in like these fantasy worlds, but when you're more like on Mio's side of the thing, you're playing way more sci-fi worlds, but you have these side stories that pop up. And when you're in Zoe's fantasy world, Mio's sci-fi worlds might start popping up, and you don't know what kind of sci-fi or what kind of cyberpunk type thing is going to be. Yeah. And I absolutely loved, like, I'm playing with Barrett, and every time a Mio side story pops up, I'm like, oh, here we fucking go. We're gonna get that good shit.
Yep.
And it often was like such a breath of fresh air to go from fantasy to be like, okay, we're doing 5 to 10 minutes of a sci-fi thing real quick before we continue what we're doing, or vice versa, where we are in the sci-fi world and it is like, all right, let's see what bullshit Zoe's got for us. And we hop into it, and I'm surprised many times because the stuff they do with Zoe's side stories, because they can get so wacky, because fantasy is open to so many interpretations of it. I just love where they go with that stuff. I think if you want to go, you can go.
No, please.
Oh, I was going to kind of veer into like, I think one of the things that, in regards to what they do with the genre, because I think the genre side of the stuff is fun and interesting because they are throwing at you different types of sci-fi and different types of fantasy. The thing that I kept looking at Barrett and saying is that I don't like that this is a story that's about storytelling, because Zoe and Mio are writers, right? And so like the idea of these stories is that these are stories they're telling in their books. That didn't work for me because oftentimes I'm like, these aren't stories. these are just gameplay segments. Like I'm hopping into a side story and it's like, oh, like, fly through the thing and get to the end. And I'm like, man, this would be such a better story if it was about game design. If there are game designers and all these different things we're hopping into were different like video game genres, because the game, like it was Split Fiction, tackles so many different types of video game, I guess, genres and styles, that would have made way more sense. And that, for me, that was the letdown of hopping into a side story, being like, all right, let's see what story you got for us, and being like, oh, this wasn't a story, but this was a cool gameplay segment. Like, why couldn't this game be more about that?
So yeah, the side stories I truly loved, every one of them. Well, except for the pig, but like even then, it was like the payoff was good to that one, right? And so it was the idea of I said early on, I say it at the end, I'm like, this should have been the game. But every side story, I was like, man, why isn't this the game? And what I mean by that, I would like it to be that we were just in and out of stuff faster and faster. And I know you're going to say, well, that takes more work to do all this stuff. But yeah, that's why I'm saying condense the game. Give me the side stories to break up the things I'm doing here, but even make the main chapter shorter. Like, at this point, I'm just Monday morning quarterbacking a game. I've never fucking done anything. So what do I know? But it's back to the point of me as a consumer, like, oh, I don't care about these characters, and yes, I'm enjoying playing this, but I have no desire to see it all the way through just because I want to see the next gameplay mechanic.
I will say I was surprised by how much this game didn't drag for me.
Not at all for me either.
Yeah, on the side of It Takes Two, I'm definitely one of the people that thought that game just went on way too long. And by the time me and Barrett finished this game, like, yeah, it could have been, for me, I was like, it could have been maybe 2 levels shorter, but even by the time we finished, I was kind of like, man, I could have used more. Like, I kind of, by the time we get to the last level, it was more like, oh, I want more of this. Like,
100%.
There's way more to chew on here.
1,000% of that.
But yeah, I was surprised by how much I felt like I wasn't, the pacing felt right for me.
There was a clear moment in the game that I feel like, and without spoilers here, like there's 2 levels towards the end that I think that they could have cut or just changed and moved somewhere else. I actually feel like a criticism I have of the game is I don't feel like gameplay wise it's paced that well throughout it, where I feel like some of the earlier stuff is like harder and more hype and set PC than some of the later stuff is, or the balance of whatever those things are just I feel feels better in some of the earlier stuff than the later stuff. And that's not 100% true the entire time, but I just feel like the A to B to C to D was kind of in the wrong order, at least not the order that I would put them in. And I just feel like taking out, there's a clear like story beat that we could have just jumped to the end. I think that would have been a more satisfying package overall. But there's still a lot of fun to be had in the other stuff. It just kind of felt more like more content as opposed to like, oh, we're really focusing on just the good stuff here, especially when you see the highs of this game. And like when the game is at its most creative and most like, wow, like when we out loud are saying wow or holy shit or look at that, like there's so many of those moments that the amount of other moments that I'm just like, oh, this is cool. I feel like we can cut a couple of those, and I think it would have went a longer way. But overall, though, I feel like it doesn't outstay its welcome. I just think that it could have been stronger if it was a little shorter.
Interesting. To hear you guys talking about the story and stuff like that, because I've never played a Haze-like game. Playing through it, I think I just didn't put that much weight on the story, because to me it seemed like, do people play these games for the story, or do they play it for the cool gameplay mechanics? Is story like a driving factor in these games?
Honestly, usually? I think that's why I land more at a 9 than an 8, because I think stories are as much of a driving factor in Haze-like games as is presented in Split Fiction. It just so happens that this story I just don't think is as good as the other stories, where It Takes Two does have like, It Takes Two is about a divorce, and like it is, I think that story makes more sense for what you're doing in that game than this game, I guess, makes sense for what you're doing with this story. I think this story almost feels like they sat in the studio and went, all right, what's a kind of story that we can tell that allows us to do crazier things than we were able to do in like the other games? And this story allows them to do that because it's all fantasy shit, right? It's all like, it's within the mind. I don't know. Like it's in a crazy scenario where they can give you 2D, they can give you 3D, they can give you top down, they can give you all these different, ways of playing. And I think because of that, they kind of had to put more emphasis on making this story feel a bit more, I guess, grounded, or I don't know. Like it feels like they weren't able to put as much focus into making the story as good as they could have, because it was more focused on the gameplay, which worked for me because I think at this point with Haze Light, I'm more on the side of, just get rid of story. In fact, in your next game, don't even have a story. Just have it be levels and just let me and my friend play as 2 characters and call it a day. Because I think the gameplay shines so much that it's almost a thing of, if these weren't human characters that we were dealing with, if this was a, I don't know, like a Ratchet, or like, maybe not Ratchet is a bad example. If this is a 3D platformer with like anthropomorphic animals or some shit, and we're not worrying about story at all, this is a 10 out of 10 for me.
Bless, I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
Like, I think the 3D mascot platformer point is very, very apt, because I think that if you gave that level of story to this game, because again, I do think the writing's funny, and I think that like the tone that it's going for with the jokes and the humor backing up the gameplay, the quips back and forth between the characters, more often than not, I was like, I'm into this stuff. It is just the amount of cutscenes, which there's a lot. They clearly were trying to tell a story. Story was a priority for them in this game, like in development of this game. And I feel like, yeah, with what you're saying, like, take that stuff away and just like have a save the princess type story, like would really go a long way.
In this one too, again, just somebody more quarterback this thing, just take away the antagonist. Like the idea here, right? This is not a spoiler, right? Is that there's this guy who's invented this machine where writers can step into these bubbles and then basically play, because as Blessing saying, it would make more sense for a game design, but play the story out that they have in their head. So they're a character in there and they go and do the thing, and then that would write the story and that would be the end of it, right?
Yeah.
These two women find themselves in the same bubble. Bam, they're split fiction. Something's gone wrong. But then they add in this like enemy to it, where you could have just been like, oh shit, we fell in together and now our worlds are merging. And somebody on the outside could have been like, find the glitches and get out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then it just is, you're playing through and doing the thing. And then if you want to have them try to become friends, enemies, whatever, you want to tell the story between the two of them, that'd be fine.
But clearly they wanted to like say something with the way that they presented
And I don't think, and I mean,
Good
again,
job.
subtle as a sledgehammer. As soon as this
Yeah.
starts, you know where we're going on all of this. And it's like, I don't think you nailed that. And so I know you asked him, like, you know, are you playing these for the story?
Yeah.
My thing would be, I am playing pretty much every game for a story, right? That's why I choose this as my entertainment factor. And I think, you know, what about Monster Hunter Wilds, right? And even there, I would be like, well, the story there is the monster I'm wearing and the thing I'm going for.
He has to find his home.
This is my, yeah, we gotta get this kid to his fucking house. Got it. There's a callback to the 12-hour stream. But like, no, it would be the thing of like, my character is the story that I'm going and doing. So like for this to play this way and have this, like, these are meant to be, the way they've always been talking about it, is a co-op playable movie you're doing with your friends, right? That's how it's always played out. And like, that's why Kevin and I have such fond memories of A Way Out, of him coming over and us going through and doing that. You know, I have so much with Jen of playing It Takes Two. And I enjoy the experience we had here. But again, if it's just us playing stuff, that could have been a let's play rather than a full play, and I would have been happy and satiated, right?
One more
But
thing.
Joey, before you do that,
Yes.
let's take a quick word from our sponsor.
This episode is brought to you by Monster Hunter Now. Whether I'm taking Ben to the playground, soccer practice, or on a hike with Jen, I'm wandering the outdoors more than ever. That's where Monster Hunter Now comes in. It's an authentic Monster Hunter experience on your mobile that lets you find and hunt monsters in the real world using your phone, whether you're out on a walk, commuting, or just need a quick hunting break between your console sessions. And right now, there's no better time to jump in, because Monster Hunter Now is running an epic collaboration event with Monster Hunter Wilds, packed with surprises that any Monster Hunter fan won't want to miss. Let's talk about the good stuff. For the first time, a monster from Monster Hunter Wilds has made its way into Monster Hunter Now. Players can also experience the thrill of riding a Sacred from Monster Hunter Wilds with the new layered equipment and so much more. This won't be available once the event ends, so don't miss your chance to get it while you can, and don't you worry about me and that Sacred look. I already unlocked it. But that's not all. By completing event quests, you'll unlock a special gift code that can be redeemed in Monster Hunter Wilds. These rewards will give you an early head start, making sure you're geared up and ready to take on the next big adventure. So if you haven't already, now's the perfect time to download Monster Hunter Now. It's free to play, and trust me, once you start hunting monsters in the real world, you'll be hooked. Go to kindafunny.com/mhnow, jump into the event before it's gone, and I'll see you out there. Remember, that's kindafunny.com/mhnow. Happy hunting.
Sorry, Joey.
No,
Continue.
you're fine. I was just gonna say, to your point about you think that it would have worked better if they were like video game developers instead of writers. I think that the gameplay is so clearly a love letter to different genres and different types of
1000%.
games
Yeah.
that making them devs would have really narrowed
the
it.
nose.
Yeah, it's like
Oh,
for
I
the
see.
story that's already pretty on the nose, that would have really made it one note. And I think that they probably thought like, hey, we want to do all these different types of gameplay. What other forms of storytelling do we think that would work well for this? And then decided writing is like the next best option.
Speaking of gameplay real quick, something that I really appreciate about this one in comparison to It Takes Two is I do think the difficulty was ramped up. I don't think it's like impossibly hard in any way, but I feel like it was the right level of challenge, and there was multiple things that felt good when we achieved them, right?
100%.
And there's certain boss fights in particular that I think do really, really good jobs of throwing a bunch of things at you. You're constantly moving with the controller. You're shooting this thing, moving this way, jumping a different way, and on top of that, there are very funny jokes happening, and the boss is attacking you and while like talking shit to you, but what they're saying is funny, and like there's a lot of like meta jokes based on just game design or references to things, and like that's what I think the game sings the most, is when it's actually challenging you and it's not just the hey, hold forward and keep jumping, which there is a fair amount of in this game, but I think that it's rarely at a point that I'm like, okay, just keep going, because the environments are so varied, and there's, even if you are, I mean, I don't want to say what I was going to say there. There's a lot of moments in this game where you're just jumping from like pedestal to pedestal to pedestal to pedestal. But because every time you're doing it, it looks completely different. It feels different. And I think that's very impressive for this game, because there's a lot of that.
My question about that, I agree with you that this game is harder than It Takes Two. Harder is not the right word. There's a difficulty increase here, right? And I enjoy that. We played on normal difficulty. You can crank it down. There's other stuff there. Do you think playing this, if you were to play with Gia, could she have gotten through this?
Not a chance. Gia could not have got through this game.
I was having that thought while me and Bear were playing, the fact that about like a year and a half ago for Christmas, I went over to my sister's house right in Houston. And like me and my nephews were like booting up their Xbox and seeing what games you had, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we played this game It Takes Two a while ago, but we got stuck." And like, you know, booted up It Takes Two. I got him past the part they were stuck at, but like looking at that game, I was surprised by how far they even got, because one of them was like 8 years old, the other is like 4 years old, and I'm like, oh man, I know you working with this 4-year-old is gonna be a struggle of you trying to get past some of these parts. Playing through Split Fiction, I was like, oh, they're not getting past half this shit. I don't know how they're gonna be doing this.
Something that we talked about too was, because there's so many homages to different types of gameplay and stuff like that, I think even for me, if I didn't have Maria, who has like a wider breadth of game knowledge, I think it would have been hard for me, because she inherently was like, oh, I know what they're going for with this, what the inspiration was, this is what we have to do.
Yeah.
And so I think not having that kind of historical knowledge of different games and genres and types and stuff like that is like does hold you back a little bit.
I do
or make it harder.
I do wonder if there is something beneath the hood that is back to what you were mentioning earlier.
I really
game
do
getting
think it
easier.
is, because like there was one point where I was like, oh, we don't have turrets trying to kill us anymore, because they have murdered us
That's
multiple
so funny.
times.
Yeah.
So I think it's small things like
Interesting.
that where it's like, okay, we'll give you some little buffs.
Again, I wasn't able to confirm this, right? But it felt, and I think for a game like this, you have to design it around some kind of rubber banding, because you have two people doing a lot of set pieces. In this video
Maybe
game.
more set pieces than
it's
any
an
video game's
entire
ever
game
had.
of set pieces.
Yeah, which is
straight up.
incredible. But the fact that you have so many set pieces and you have people that are playing in tandem, you have to build in some things to be like, all right, cool. Even if you're falling behind, we're going to find a way to zip you forward, whether it is you falling and then respawning up to where your partner is, or whether it's us just finding ways to bring you together. I think you have to do some stuff under the hood, and I wouldn't be surprised, based on the kind of game it is. It is a family game. It is a game that you want to be playing with people. I saw Patrick Klepek even tweeting about playing.
Hold on, because I want this question and then I have it pulled up. Go.
Oh, okay, yeah.
From Icy Wiener here?
Yeah.
Super Chats in says, my son is 5, but good at games. Can he play this? If he's good at games, I think yes. I think it will be a challenge, but I think that he will be able to learn and figure out like how to get better at games and beat this game. I do think though that this game, and Joey actually I think kind of hit the nail on the head there, where because it does reference so many gameplay styles of previous games, there is like an inherent leg up for people that have a history playing different genres. I do think this is a great way to kind of learn the genres, and I also think that the game does a very good job of having the exact same control scheme the entire way through. Like your R2 is always your ability, your L2 is always your like alt ability or like ability modifier. R1 is always a form of grapple. X is always a jump, and I think that because of that, and then square is like a dash, like every single gameplay style, whether it's 2D, 3D, top down, like whatever, it still controls the same. And I think that goes a long way in allowing people to like kind of push themselves if they're not comfortable. But me and Greg joked multiple times, and we were joking, but we're like, Nick Scarpino couldn't do this. You know what I mean? And like, clearly he can. But like, it did have that moment of like, oh, he'd get frustrated with this, and like he wouldn't want to keep playing.
Friend of the show, Patrick Klepek, of course, has a whole bunch of different things going on. One of them is Crossplay, which is a newsletter he does about parenting and gaming.
Cool.
Today's is I'm playing Split Fiction with my kid, and it rules. Playing this new co-op game with my 8-year-old has been a special experience. To join it in progress, this. So long as your kid has basic platforming competence and you're okay with hearing a few swears and a little violence along the way, you should have a great time. Parentheses. Split Fiction got my 4-year-old to accidentally, hilariously say shit. Both players need to die for progress to stop, and it's only a few moments before the other person hops back in. In what we've played, it's possible to carry the other player to victory. A few times we've swapped controllers so that I could help her navigate those hard parts.
Yeah.
It's not been a process without friction, and I think it's best to explain what it's been like playing the game, walking through a few clips. And he goes,
And I think that's super vital for Haze Light, because when you look at It Takes Two and the sales of It Takes Two, it sold 20 million units by October 2024, right? And like, that's a large number.
Astronomical.
That's an astronomical number, and I think a big part of that number is the fact that you are selling to families. You're selling to a wide consumer base, and I don't think I would hope that within the studio they are working meticulously to be like, all right, we got to make sure that kids can play these games, at least with their parents, or at least with each other, right? So like, I think the simple button presses, as far as the only things that are really changing, are your R2 and L2, and even when they're changing, you're still sticking with the same concept, a same control scheme for a long enough time for it to grow on you, for it to like, you know, like sink in before you switch that up. But the game comes down to like 4 different buttons. And I think that helps a lot. And yeah, the respawn thing that Patrick was talking about, right, like helps a lot. So I wouldn't be surprised if, even though for us we're like, oh, this shit is fucking tough, like how are kids gonna play this? I'm sure the kids are gonna be fine playing this game.
sure.
Shout out to the kids.
The
You know
kids,
what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
the
better
youth.
than us. So much better than us. Volk Dasher super chats in saying, I can't watch live, so I'm leaving question to watch later. Who's the better, quote unquote, character to play as with more crazy gameplay? The sci-fi main, Mio, or the fantasy main, Zoe? This is an excellent question.
I love that question.
And because Greg and I haven't really talked about it, clearly both of us were fighting over the sci-fi one. To
Fighting, yeah.
start. I mean, well, we both wanted the sci-fi one
yeah.
going in.
Yeah.
I ended up winning that. And throughout the game, I had multiple times. We didn't say this. I never said this to you. I really won. I won out here. I think I had the better gameplay the entire way through.
Interesting. See, what I think is fascinating about it is this. I didn't connect with the fantasy world and the levels, but I never didn't like being Zoe. I thought I was always doing something as interesting as you. So I was never like, oh man, Mio's got this cool thing, and I wish I was always like, oh, you're doing that, and I'm equally as cool, or it's fine, whatever thing's going on.
I will say I don't think the genre of character you choose really determines the kind of gameplay that you have, because both characters are usually in the sci-fi thing, or both characters are going to be in the fantasy world.
Yeah,
you just get different
abilities.
abilities.
And
And
I feel like they do a good job of swapping them between worlds.
Yes.
yes, where like I'm somebody who in a game like this, if there's a scenario where somebody's like, I don't know, if somebody's like moving the world around, and somebody else is like in the world jumping around, I want to be in the person who's in the world jumping around, because I believe in my platforming ability. And there are times where I'm like, all right, Barrett's obviously the dungeon master here, right? Or like the next level, I'm the one that's controlling, like, all right, I'm a turret, and
We're
Barrett's
spinning this and doing that.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So they switch it up enough to give both people both experiences.
Boomslang in the chat says, is it worth a replay like It Takes Two then? The different abilities actually encourage us to go back and play it again recently.
I don't think so.
Here's the thing. It's funny because I'm not interested in doing that. I do think that the gameplay styles are varied enough that there's gameplay there. Like if you were like, I'm craving more of this game, there's another game to go back and play. Like the amount of times I'd look at Greg's screen and be like, he's doing something completely different than me.
100%.
I was very impressed by, and there were a handful of times I was like, oh, I do wish I was doing that thing right now as opposed to what I was doing. So there's a lot there, and incredibly well designed in terms of let's have this area, and you have this ability, you have this ability. You both need to work together. There was a lot of communication necessary.
And
throughout the game.
mainly
I thought
when we
was
were
great.
fucking up is when we weren't talking.
Exactly.
Right? When we thought we knew what we were doing,
Rushing
and not paying
through,
attention.
yeah.
That's so interesting, because I felt like with Maria and I, like,
Joey went off comms. I
no,
refuse to talk to
honestly,
him.
both of us were so locked. And like, Maria's one of my best friends, so like this makes sense to me that like we didn't have to do a lot of talking until we got to things that like broke both of our brains essentially. But it's for us, it was very much a we're vibing and like in the flow state kind of a thing.
For us, it was less like talking things through about, okay, you go up there and all whatever. And it was way more like we're fucking sick ass US Navy SEALs. You know what I mean? Like at the end of Karate Kid, the next Karate Kid.
Yeah, Greg's number one power
Really?
fantasy of Navy SEAL.
All it came down to was just like, okay, boom.
That's true.
Like, we
1,
just-
2, 3, jump. 1, 2, 3,
Like,
jump.
and then we would just like, got to a point that like we didn't even need to like talk that through. Just like we would start making sounds, and like we got there. It was like, all right, this is satisfying.
I also think it's maybe potentially an inherent difference of like not necessarily men and women, but just maybe that too.
Yeah, badass Navy SEAls, you know.
Yeah, Navy SEAL's not on
What
my
were you
list.
saying, Buzz?
I'll just say me and Barrett are gamers.
Yeah.
Like we're just locked the fuck in the entire time. Like anything that was like a time, like all right,
Yeah, you guys
jump,
didn't
then
really
we
talk
jump.
a whole lot.
Yeah, no, because I think me and Barrett are the same kind of person, and
Yeah.
like we're both just good. We're both good at video games. All right, let me be real here. And so like as we're going, anything that was all right, we got to fucking race to the finish, and it's platforming, but we got to stay together. We didn't have to communicate that shit. We know that we're just going. Just jump when you got to jump. Like we're gonna stick together. We're good.
6-2. Joe, you were pointing at the chat for a sec.
Yeah, and I don't remember what the person said, so that's all I got.
Anything else we want to talk about with Split Fiction?
I'm still so impressed with Hazelight. You know, I think it's always interesting to have these critical reviews. I'm going to give it an 8. Oh, I called it great, right? But it's like that thing of like, I think even like I saw it go through. It's like, oh, it sucks Andy's not here. I would like to know if he thinks it's a contender, right? Right now,
Andy hasn't played.
well, I know, but he owns the contender a bit.
Oh, I don't know this.
Oh, don't worry about it. Is it a
Contender.
contender? Indicating
got
will
it,
it be
got it,
on
got
your
it.
top 10 list,
Got it, got
right?
it.
Like for me, this one won't be. I don't see Split Fiction being on my top 10 at the end of the year. Not because it's bad. I think it's great, right? And I think the gameplay is so good. It just didn't give me the experience I think I wanted out of it. And that goes as far as too, just like you're doing so much stuff in here and there's so many assets, but still like how many times I'm like, oh, this outfit looks dumb. You know, and like dumb shit like that. Like of just a game as a whole for what I'm talking about and what I want out of this kind of thing. But I don't want like my criticism of it, and again, me laughing at the writing nonstop during the Let's Play to get in the way of like, Hazelight is so good at what they do, and what they do is make badass co-op games for you to play with your friends.
This will be a contender for me, but I feel like, again, the disappointment comes from I think it's going to be in the back half of my 10 as opposed to I wish this was in my top 5. And this game will not be in my top 5 at the end of the year. And unless a ton of incredible games come out that push this out, like I think that this will firmly be sitting in that 5 to 10 spot somewhere.
Yeah, this will likely change by the end of the year, but right now it's my number one. Like there's not another game I've played this year that would top it. And I think again this comes down to I think my prioritization for this game of gameplay over story, where I was let down by the story, but I also wasn't coming in here for the story. I was coming in for the gameplay, and the gameplay for me is like for me on the level of other things that I would look at as contenders, right? Like I'm coming out of this on the gameplay side being like, yo, I think the platforming here for me worked as much as an Astrobot works for me, right? Like
wow.
I think it is on that level as far as what they're doing on the gameplay side. So it's a strong contender for me.
Yeah. I mean, I play games that I know I'm going to like pretty much. Like, I feel like I definitely play way less than a lot of people at this office. I think it'll be on my list, mostly because too, like the thing that I don't know that we've ever talked or that we really touched on is like, I had so much fun with Maria. Like we laughed, like crying, laughing multiple times in this, mostly when the parts we weren't good at. And it's just like, you have to throw it at me. You can't just throw it wildly out there. I'm like, fuck, that's right. But we've been playing this for 6 hours and I kind of forgot about that part of the game. Like this will go in my like list of like favorite gaming experiences. Like we just had so much fun playing together that I think that being on that list will definitely mean that it makes my top list of the year, even if I don't play a full 10 games.
Great stuff.
We have a final super chat here from RIVL Knight. How's the boss fights?
Oh, I love the boss fights. I think they're fucking fantastic. Like for me, I would put the boss fights next to the side stories is probably my favorite parts of the game. But I'm curious how you guys feel.
I did not love the boss fights, and that definitely could be like a get good kind of a thing of like dying all the time doesn't make it particularly fun. I do think that a couple of them stand out as being like, maybe we could take out one element. Like, I don't know if we need this and this and this, like, because at that point we're just hopping around someone trying to stay alive. So I would say that I kind of played through a lot of this kind of despite the boss fights, and that was like the part of me that like we really had to like suffer through to get to the more fun stuff for me.
For me, I like how what did you like most, right? This would be the boss fights would be right behind side stories for you. Side stories are number one for me by a long shot, and then behind it would be not the destination, but the journey, the stuff we did on those moments. So boss fights for me, I didn't hate, but like when I think, what did I think of these boss fights? I think of when I was annoyed by something.
Yeah.
Like, fucking this guy was doing this. The shark came by this way and I should have gone, you know what I mean? And that's the one we just did last night, so it's a different thing, but.
I'm closer with Bless, where I'd put the boss fights right behind the side stories for me, where I really, really, really loved them. I think that my biggest criticism of them is multiple times I wish I had the full screen for them. Like that was the only time in the game that I was like, they throw so many particles at you and there's so many moves and so many things. And again, they make the game easy enough that like if you die a whole bunch of times, you're right back in the action. It doesn't really matter. But I feel like I would have played a lot better if I had just a little bit more screen real estate to see what's going on. But I think the boss fights were so creative, and to me, they just kind of like were a perfect example, like a microcosm of the things I love most about this game, of like great gameplay gimmicks being used to their utmost, great fun music playing, cool set piece moments with the boss, and I think that was the funniest dialogue in the game was the boss fights and the quips that they would have, and like
the one in particular, right? Yeah, the one guy.
So yeah, I really enjoyed that stuff. Cool. And that's it, everybody. Split Fiction. Joey gave it 8.5. I gave it an 8. Greg gave it an 8. Bless gave it a 9.
And this Thursday, you can see Tim and I play the entire thing after
Gamescast. Exactly.
Gamescast.
Let us know in the comments below if you are excited to play Split Fiction. Like I was saying, I recommend it to everybody. I think it's a great time, and also at a discounted discount, it's not the right word, but at a lower price point for entry. Plus, you can play free with somebody. Like that's awesome stuff. So support this type of game. I think it's really important. Shout out to Haze Light for continuing to crush stuff. But stay tuned, everybody. Right after this, you're getting a Kind of Funny podcast live for everybody on Twitch and YouTube. I'm on that. It's going to be fun. Till next time, love y'all. Goodbye.